So what do you think about cards like has been under discussion, like Vote Captivation and possibly other cards such as Lily's Blessing?
Yeah, I guess there's a bit of a range. So Vote Cap, been there since '94. It's been, I guess, discussed a number of times over the years. And
for potential ban?
Well,
or
yeah,
change?
the Ratha as well. I mean, you look at the old news group. There's a big long line of list of things. I don't play a lot of vote decks myself, so I wouldn't miss it. But I don't see it as being that bad. I think it's something you expect. So it's a deck strategy that if you're playing another deck, you need to think about how you're going to stop that going.
Yeah.
That's how I think about it. So if you have this villain Vote Cap deck, which they won't villain again, why not? Cost one, whatever. That's great.
Yeah.
And it really hurts kind of the attrition decks and the toolbox decks, because the way they're going to hopefully win is by their praised vampires running out of blood or resources, so they can't do anything anymore. So that's unfortunate, but at the same time, I mean, it doesn't really open up any decks. So if you get rid of it, I don't think it actually sends any decks to the wall. They're all still good. Eureka and Friends Vote is still strong. Normal Law Firm is still strong. The Fodder set is still strong. I mean, the ones that it might mess with the most, people using Presence and Anarchs, because they go through so much blood, or something like that. But I don't think it really hinders anyone that much if it goes, or is changed. I've heard people talk about change it so you either gain the 2 pool or fill up. So you choose one or the other kind of thing. I don't know. I'm not really.
That's a really good point. That's a good point. One with the decks will not be made invalid with it.
Yeah. The other one, which you mentioned, the Lilith's Blessing. So the intent behind the card was to encourage people who wanted to use Discipline Masters to use them. So Bombway is a trifle, and all of the Discipline Masters aren't. And I guess Scott couldn't see a neat way of going back and deciding which Discipline Masters should be trifles, which ones shouldn't be. So obviously Dominate should never be a trifle, Presence should never be a trifle, Fortitude probably doesn't matter, Protein probably doesn't either, yeah. So I guess it was a way of making these worthless cards slightly more useful, and that's great. The problem is it really works very unfortunately with Villain. The fact that Villain's the trifle, so depending what deck you're playing, but if you look at the girls decks, or girls with A's in particular, which I think is the one that cares the least about Blood and Vampires, you get a sideball out, you Villain for 10, the Lilith's Blessing gives a 3, you don't really care because you're playing crows and bats.
And Taste of Vita.
And Taste, yeah. So if anything's really going to kill you, it's really going to kill you anyway.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're fine.
Yeah.
The idea is you're supposed to be rushing a load of Malk damn guys anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's a very bad card. There's just so many. I mean, I guess the theory is if everyone's got it, it's fine.
Yeah.
And it is available, and you can still get it from the gyms or Welsh and Noosa.
Yeah.
They have it available in the tournament packs, and I guess it's not the cheapest thing, but it's like €10 or whatever. So you could buy it, and if everyone had it, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
In that sense, but some decks work with it so much better than others.
Yeah.
And again, part of that is because some players have access to Villain, which makes it so much better. I mean, you can use it with the Vessel, and it still works really well, or you can just use it when you're out of blood, but it's never as good as using it with Villain.
But if everyone would have it, and like using it for Villain and for a Vessel, and using it just when they run out of blood, do you think this will increase the chance of people timing, or is it just
more blood is bad?
Okay.
So more blood on vampires means you can oust faster.
And you don't think this will, if people...
That's not what happens. People just sit there with more blood on vampires.
If people realize that they their decks with Lilith's Blessing times out a lot? Don't you think people will stop playing because of it?
No. Well, so in your play group, it doesn't matter because you know each other so well or whatever. So I generally find like, well, no, in my particular play group this is a mistake. But if I play with players who I know quite well, it's going much faster anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, because you know what they're playing, you know what people are thinking. It takes less, I find. I mean, you guys deal in your play groups in a different manner. So it's kind of hard to gauge. In tournaments, it's a different story, and people don't play so many tournaments anyway, so I don't think you necessarily realise that it's Lilith, and it's all incremental as well. Mm-hmm. So it's like a Lilith here, a Lilith there, and it's really hard to tell how much that adds up. And you know, you could just have everyone playing Malk 94 or Malk Kindred Spirits again, and it wouldn't matter. You know, Lilith would have very little effect on that. Yeah. There's an extra few pull for people because they can play villains, great, but you're still getting bled for so much. I don't know. I think it's really hard to measure, and I don't think people will twig. I think it probably does slow things down, but the decks that really abuse it speeds them up.
Okay.
So
if you actually aim to use this blessing for ousting in a sense.
Yeah. So you know, the girls' decks use it in a really efficient way, which is I only need this amount of blood to do stuff because I'm either doing stuff at stealth, which is free, or I'm going to rush people. That's great. You see other kind of wingy dom decks and wingy presence decks that use it. Same kind of story. That is it increases the oust.
Yeah.
But I've seen other decks just use it, like some guy. So we're playing like an Aramin's deck, great deck, using villains and then Lilith's Blessings. We had a couple of Lilith's Blessings in the deck, so using up card slots. He had villains, which is great, but you wouldn't necessarily think that he would normally use villains in that kind of deck.
Yeah.
And he's using it because he's using probably 2-3 Lilith's Blessings.
Yeah.
And that isn't helping. It means he gets more vampires out, probably.
Yeah, but with less blood.
With less blood overall, it doesn't necessarily help him get the oust. Because more vampires means everyone's got more vampires if you had, you copy that situation around.
Yeah.
And that helps some decks, those, with something to deliver and delivery method. Other decks, so the toolbox decks, and the attrition decks, and the combat decks, and the wall decks, I don't think any of them like that card at all. I think it's really bad for them. Everything else is great because you wouldn't play it in proper Kindred Spirits because it's wasted card slots, but it would just get you another vampire and you might go faster. But that's not your issue with Kindred Spirits. It's the fact you're going to either get rushed or you end up randomly killing 2 people and then suddenly run out of cards because one of the guys had some Raven Spies at bad times or something. Mm-hmm. That's the issue there. So I think it's a bad card and I don't think there's any way of fixing it.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. I think.
And perhaps there's some other cards as well. But I know some guys talk about Giant's Blood, and I appreciate it's a random lottery, but I've always been of the view of things like once per game. I mean, you could. Rather than getting rid of it, I'd rather change it so it's once per player.
Yeah.
So the random lottery goes away. The problem with changing cards when you can't reprint them is that it's just not a good idea.
Yeah.
So I know that the design guys don't want to do anything that changes cards if they were going to.
Yeah.
It's one way or another, and that's bad, I guess, in some ways. And Theos is probably my personal bugbear. I just think it's so wrong.
Because of the recursion aspect?
Yeah, it's the abuse. So everybody can use it.
Yeah.
But only 6 vampires or whatever. Realistically, 3 of those are going to properly abuse it.
Yeah.
And that's so it's the competitive advantage it gives them is too high compared to what it gives to everyone else. So the idea is it's supposed to be balanced because everybody, but double master phases, vampires are already so good, and that just makes them so much better.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have been more in line if it had a do not replace clause?
So you always had 6 cards? I don't know. I hadn't thought of it like that. I just think recursion is quite dangerous in Vampire. So you look at a game like Magic, and recursion works because you've got two people playing each other. So if one guy's playing his own game, and the other guy's playing his own game, and then one of them wins, that's fine. They can do that.
Yeah.
Because it's only two people and they're playing each other directly. When you have 5 players, you have one guy doing weird stuff over here in the corner, and you can interact a little bit with the other two. It's causing pain and suffering to 5 people rather than 1 versus 1, if that makes sense. Maybe that's perhaps not articulated that well, but he's causing disruption to 5 people. If he takes everybody and kills them really quickly, that's fine. No issues. But if you just mess around with Anthelios and it's getting the same Pentax again and again or whatever, that's just kind of I don't think it works so well. But Sodari is a bit dubious as well, but that's clan specific and it's an action of stealth, so that's nowhere near as bad.
Yeah, because it's easier to.
There's a lot more that can get in the way of that.
Yeah, and
it's more limited. Yeah. Well, there are more Giovanni than there are guys with double master phases, but if you look at the TWA, you see certain guys with double master phases far more than any other vampire.
Okay.
So, I think it's. I mean, it's a strong deck archetype AAA and Friends, and it was always strong pre-Anthelios. Anthelios made it stronger. You can argue that by taking some cards out, like Kindred Restructure and Dramatic Upheaval, you've kept it at a suitable power level.
Yeah.
But I think Villain helps it, and I think it helps it more than any other deck archetype. I think it loves the fact that it's got, you get rid of these useless minion taps and have this fantastic trifle, and then you add in the blessing as well. I think that is the deck archetype that I think has gained the most out of these cards. Just that specific deck has really gained a lot of fun toys.
Okay. So essentially the problem for you with Anthelios is being able to play the same master card over and over
again, yeah.
Without having that many copies in the actual deck, only having the one in the actual.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's too. I mean, like, if you think that Heart of Cheating's good, and it is great.
Yeah.
And it's got nothing compared to Anthelios, because Anthelios is like, I want that right now. I dial it up, bang.
Yeah.
I mean, it limits it because you're doing 1-for-1 swap. If you didn't have multiple master phases, it would be just reasonable. So if you think about Asher Tablets, that's just reasonable with no multiple master phases, and you probably won't get it to go off.
Yeah.
With multiple master phases, and you can play 3 masters a turn, it starts becoming quite abusive.
Yeah.
I don't think any of them. Well, I don't know. I would love to see Anthelios go. Personally, I hate that card. I still play it.
But if it's a good card, you have to play it.
Yeah.
To be competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, thinking something is bad is not the same thing as.
Yeah. Although I never played Cyclops Club, but yeah. So, I don't know. I think it's just an awkward card. But I mean, there are other cards which have issues for different reasons. So when you think about the counseling effects cards, they interact weirdly with the timing, which is just annoying. So things like yeah, and that's annoying for a different reason. And I don't know. So it depends how you use them. So I use them to try and get oust. So I'll bounce to my prey and DI their bounce. That's how I think it should be used. Other people use it to do strange things like and just, I don't know, I see a lot of use where they just use it on cross table oust to stop the oust happening.
Yeah.
Because they seem to have this view that they should get all the VPs. So that's not how it works.
Yeah.
If you do that, you'll get half VP. People need to die.
Yeah. You should aim for 3 or 4 VPs in a game.
Yeah. Yeah. 3 is a great number normally.
Yeah.
If you can do it. I mean, I can't really. I hadn't thought about. Maybe if you had it so you never replaced Anthelios, then that actually might be enough of a drawback.
Yeah.
Don't know. It's a tough one because masters are the most powerful cards in the game.
Yeah.
So being able to reuse what you like when you like is ridiculous.
Yeah, agreed.
Maybe, well, I mean, event cards in general are also pretty strong and don't interact very well with other cards in the game. Mm-hmm. So there's limited ways of interacting with events.
Yeah.
And that's quite frustrating. So if you don't have the not to be when an event's played, that's it.
Or the uncording.
Yeah.
It's a bit random though.
It is a bit random, and it has the issue that it reduces your hand, which is probably, I don't know, that feels a bit harsh. I don't know.
But you can make a deal with a cross table.
Please don't discard a card so I can draw one. Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Anything else, or should this conclude the interview?
I don't know.
Do you have anything to add?
Keep bleeding, and treat your fellow players with respect, and don't puke on them, as we've been told to do today.
Right.
Perhaps it was unnecessary.
Okay, so this concludes interview with Hugh Angsisting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.